All right. Well, we'll get started tonight. Welcome, everybody, to our Tuesday night show and share at Knox Makers. I hope you are all feeling great after the barbecue here. Thanks for coming. Anybody's first time here at Knox Makers? First timers? Oh, welcome. Great. Well, so our Tuesday night show and shares are a chance for people to come up and show what they've been working on, what they've completed, what they're stuck on, what they failed at. So we welcome all types of projects from all types of people, and we are excited because we got a bunch tonight. So let's get started with Thea, who's going to show buttons and buttonholes.
So when you're doing buttons and buttonholes on fabric, the sewing pattern usually comes with a buttonhole guide. And you literally just lay it down and you trace your buttonholes and you know exactly where you're sewing your button and your buttonhole. When you're knitting or crocheting, it's not quite as easy. The pattern tells you where to make the buttonhole on one end, but everything's floppy and stretchy, and when you get to the other end, the buttonhole doesn't always line up. So this has been something that I've fought with for a long time. I would put the buttonhole on, and then when you button everything up, you'd have gaps, or it would pull, and it just wouldn't lay right. So I learned this tip that I'm sharing today, is that when you make the button wherever the pattern tells you to, finish the row with a second buttonhole. And then when you sew the button on, you put your button directly over the hole and sew it closed as you attach the button. Then your button is attached directly over your buttonhole. And then I left the tails long. I'll put a drop of fray check, which since it's acrylic yarn, it fuses everything together. And then you can trim it short and you don't see anything. So I'm going to pass this around. I have 3 of the buttons attached and 1 buttonhole so you can see the size is the same. And then you can also see where it's attached that there's absolutely no hint once the button's on. You can't tell. Yes?
So you have the 2 sides that you're going to put together. You're trying to match the button on one side to the buttonhole on the other. So you like counting the number of stitches you do, and that's why you're spacing it out? Because I don't see why you would put a hole on both sides.
Well, this pattern isn't too bad because, yes, you have ribs that you can actually count, but a traditional sweater is mostly just this smooth fabric, and it's hard to line up exactly which row you're on by the time you carry it across. So when things get smoother, or if it's a really complicated pattern, then you can't just count rows, and you have to kind of guess where the pattern's going to go. Any other questions?
Who's the sweater for?
I was recreating a different crocheted pattern off of just a picture, and I think it might have been German, it may have been Russian. I couldn't read the instructions. So it ended up being small. So I had to make a preemie sweater to match the preemie sized dress.
Great. Coming up next, Chris is going to show a leverage adder.
All right, so I'm in the process of working on a bobcat, and I'm trying to get an axle bolt that is down in a box with no room to put a socket or an extension or an impact gun on. So it's good old wrench. Usually when you have good old wrench, you have enough room you can add length to by adding another wrench to it or a pipe or anything else, but the bolt I'm trying to get is actually down in the chain box, and there's no room to come out. So what I did, oh yeah, where's the out button? Where is the minus button on this thing? There we go. As I welded that together out of just some scrap of angle iron, so that the wrench can sit in there like so, and then it has a hole right here in it. And that hole is designed so that originally I was going to square that hole out so that I could fit it to a breaker bar and use it with a ratchet, but I started thinking after I got that far into it, and I decided that now I'm going to bolt a chain to that part and then hook it to a farm jack, because that's got 4,600 pounds of lifting power. So I am either going to break the bolt or I'm going to break it loose. I don't care which, because it's on a bad axle. But that way it locks together, so when you pull up, the wrench can't slide out. Any question? I can't get more length because where the bolt is, there's another crossbar in front of it. So the plan is to run the chain straight up to that jack and then jack the, yep. The leverage is going to come from the jack, which is going to put all the upward pressure on it.
Would it be easier just to cut a hole in the side?
It would, except for there's an axle directly across from that axle, and it's in, the easiest way to cut that hole would be a cutting torch. However, the box that these are in is full of 90 weight gear oil. So torch tends to make more of a problem. Any other questions?
How long did it take you to put that thing together?
Longer to drill the hole than the entire rest of the project, seriously. Billy had to help me. I may or may not have dulled a bit, or maybe two, but got through it. As far as the welding, it was literally just scrap that was laying in the metal area, so all I did was put 2 cuts on the angle iron and then zip it together. I'm probably into it 45 minutes. That's 3/8, so a 3/8 grade 8 bolt has enough shear pressure that the high lift jack will be able to do it. Good question, did the math on it. Anybody else? All right, I'll pass it around so you guys can play with it.
Very smart. All right, next, Rhubarb is going to show some custom dice.
So these are some custom dice that I made. They were for a game called Inspiriles, which is a game to help teach you sign language. And so the idea is that you roll the dice, and that will determine what word you need to sign. And then if you get that correct, then you cast the spell or you do the thing correctly. So I made these in FreeCAD. The images themselves were made in Inkscape. And then you combine the two, and you could kind of inset the images onto each side of the face of the dice. Once that was all created, I was able to print them. I used a resin printer with the Sryatech blue resin, which is kind of a, not rubbery, but it's kind of flexible. And then the paint was just a multi-surface acrylic paint.
Are those hands raised up or then set in?
In.
So you like put the paint in and then like sand off the top?
No, I just, I watered down the paint a little bit and I put it inside and it was able to spread out and I just, yeah.
The number 6. I keep seeing all the numbers. Is there a second hand or?
So in sign language, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Do the opposite sides add up to 7?
So 1 and 6, 5 and 2, 4 and 3. They seem to be fair dice so far.
Don't bet money.
Are they heavy enough? I mean, do you feel like they roll well?
Yeah, I could pass them around. They're, I would say they're normal dice. Thank you.
All right. Next up, Keith is going to show the usual flavors.
I got two actually, but they're kind of similar design or created a similar way. Both commission pieces, so finally it generates income. But yeah, but this was one that I put together for a friend after he charged me with trying to make him a wooden bull skull incorporating bicycle components where I could. And I just destroyed that. I mean, it was like primitive at best. So I kind of pivoted to something I was a little bit more comfortable with. So I came up with this using some old walnut wood and most recycled components, pieces, parts from flashlights, some braided aluminum cable, and then oh no, not this time. Yeah, I still a cow to the lamp maker over there. Yeah. But yeah, and then just turned like a small puck of wood on the lathe just to kind of add a little bit more to it. It's just kind of something a little simple, but so that one was the first. Thank you. And then it is minus this. This was, well, I guess it is because it's a headlamp for a bicycle. I just kind of like took what holds the lens and then just cut it in half, wire wheeled the anodizing off of it and bolted it on. And then the aluminum I braid with a drill. Just kind of take 3 strands, put them in a vise, and then chalk it in a drill, and then it spins it into that rope. You can kind of bend it in all sorts of fun shapes. And then these are kind of end caps from wheels, and yeah, these are like the little jockey wheels in your rear derailleur, and then just kind of orientated them on the spider, which was the inside of the brake rotor behind it, and then just kind of put some old chain around it, kind of connect them all together. He had seen something like this on something I'd done previous, and thought it was kind of a slick idea, so he had me kind of commission the whole piece around like that. And then the other one sniper was like a vase made of pine and cedar and walnut that turned on the lathe. There was a downed tree nearby, so I took a slice of that for the base. I'm not entirely sure what the wood is, but the coworker who had me make this really enjoys a certain kind of Prosecco. So these are like the caps that keep the cork on. Yeah, so she's like, I try to ask if people want pieces like, give me stuff, I might be able to incorporate it. And then kind of, she's a cyclist also, so kind of mixed in, additional cycling components on the other 2 flowers. Oh, thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, so it's just 8-gauge aluminum wire. You can buy spools of it. It's like the only thing that I actually purchased for the most part besides the clear coat. You can get them in a bunch of different colors. I ordered a ton of them recently, so hope to do some like more colorful stuff. But yeah, so I just take 3 strands and then just twist it with the drill. We're getting pretty good at that. But yeah, it turns out kind of neat. Still working on a way to kind of get pedals. That's the one thing I've yet to kind of conjure up where it's rigid enough that it can survive being shipped or just, handled a little bit. Maybe use steel and then, tack weld them in place. Then see if my drill can actually spin the steel that tight. I'm not entirely sure. Kind of something I'll try to work out here one of these days. And then the balls too, I guess the only thing. I think they're like dull heads or something odd like that. Yeah, but they come with like a riv nut in it. So there's machine threads, and then I just kind of capture everything in between it. Mm-hmm. So, thank you.
All right. Next up, Marianne is showing a quilt.
Hello. So I make quilts. I do a lot of different things, but this is one of the ones that I've made recently because, well, my husband said we've got to get all these things out of the living room area because it's taken up way too much space. So I finally got this quilted. Oh, this side? Where? Oh. Oh, okay. I didn't know where the camera is. So I don't know if you can see. Okay, so I did all that on a 10-foot frame at home with a Pfaff mid-arm quilter. Generally, I like to use a variegated thread, and I had a yellow that worked out really well with this. Now, this is just a panel here, but all of this along the side is pieced. And then I hand stitch all the binding on the back once I get it machine quilted or machine sewn on the front. But that's pretty much it.
I'll show the back.
Yeah, the back is just another Minions print, which I thought was really cute. It's not much, but something I did.
How long does it take to make a quilt like that?
This one probably took me about 2 weeks to piece it all together after cutting out all the pieces. And then it took me about 2 days to do the quilting because I like to set it up overnight because you have to do the layering of the top, the backing, and the cotton batting. And then when I do all the quilting in 1 day, and then it takes another 2 days for the binding usually because I hand stitch it all on the back. Yeah, thank you.
Very fun. Up next, another bicycle-themed project. Evan is showing a bicycle.
Hello, I'm Evan. I just joined last week, so I wanted to come up and say hello and share the bicycle I made this winter. Oh, can I zoom in? I'll just do this actually. Anyways, so it's like a clunker style, so kind of like mountain bike geometry, but just like a single speed with a coaster brake because not good enough to put brakes on it yet. Still working my way up to that. Yeah, I milled the tubes on mitered the tubes on a mill, and then made this little fixture out of some scrap metal. It's like an old lid. And I made turned some pieces to hold the bottom bracket, and then kind of clamped everything so I could tack it in place. Made some other miter features just to kind of, these are all kind of parts plate that I pulled out of a scrap heap, and I just milled them down and put some holes in where I needed, and I used those circular blocks for a welding table, so I just made the holes big enough to use those same clamping features. And then yeah, here's one where I tacked it in the wrong place, and then I had to cut off it and then file it down. So, learning experience there. But yeah, it was a very fun project. I painted it a nice green. Yeah, then I made this other rear end thing that would hold like a dummy axle, then weld up the back part of it. Yeah, I rode it here tonight, so if you want to check it out, it's outside. Feel free to take a spin around the parking lot if you want. But yeah, anyways, yeah.
The tubes that you have, were those specifically bought to make bicycles, or what was the source of the tubes?
Yeah, I bought them from Bicycle Fabrication Supply, I think. So the rear tube, the chain stays and the seat stays. So the seat stays have the double bend in them already. The chain stays go from oval to round. And then all the main front tubes are butted, so they're 0.9 millimeters at the ends, and then they go down to 0.6 in the middle. And then these little small tubes, those ones were just straight gauge I bought off McMaster and put them on a hand bender. Just kind of added them in for some, extra. Ooh, it's pretty light. It's especially without gears and stuff. I would totally just be throwing out it, but it's lighter than you might expect. Whenever yeah.
What's your total cost?
It was a couple $100. I think material wise, I spent $300 on it all. I had to buy some, so I cut the seat tube shorter, but I'd already cut the relief in it, so then it bent in. So I had to buy an expander tool to fix that part of it. So there was like some unforeseen costs for sure that I didn't really intend. But yeah, I'd say like probably $500 or $600 all in on it. Yeah.
Follow up on the land question. So I didn't hear, but is it steel or?
Yeah, it's steel. Yeah, it's like 4130 chromoly. Easy. I'm still getting a hang of the welding, so it was sticking with that for now.
The steer tube, does that come with like what you need to like put bearings in it and like press on set bearing into it?
Yeah, I took it to a bike shop to get that machined, or like milled out after I welded it and whatnot.
Okay.
But yeah, they sell them like, it was already like shaped, so it has like a little chamfer on the outside, but it didn't. They don't machine the inside yet until. And I also took it to a bike shop to get the bottom bracket threads chased because like after they were already threaded, but then you weld it and then like it messes up the threads. Then you got to go chase it again. It's like, all right. But anyways, yeah, it was a very fun one. I hope to make more, but hopefully they don't take as long.
What shop does that?
It was actually out in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
I did not make this here, but in a similar metal shop to this place. But yeah, anyways.
You have any plans for a Mark II?
I do, yes. Something with gears and brakes. But yeah. I recently just made a trailer for my commuter bike, so I've been dragging stuff around with that. But yeah, hopefully another bike at some point. Anyways, thank you all.
All right, great. The last name I have on my list is Bronco, showing a workbench.
All right, how's it going? So basically, this is my shed, and I was trying to find a better way to organize it. There was just stuff everywhere, and I didn't have any room to work on anything. So I basically thought, well, I want to put together a bench, but I'm pretty lazy with making stuff, so usually I try and cheat a little bit. So I want to like bolt things to the wall to save the time leveling things out and messing around with all that. But in this instance, I wasn't sure which wall it was going to go on, so I had to make it freestanding, which added some complexity. But to add to the laziness, I also try to do as minimal math as possible because I still am trying to get my head around fractions. So that's the space basically where I'm either going along this wall or that wall, and you can see I've just got stuff hanging everywhere. And so I started with some 4x4 beams. I had a couple of lengths that I'd already used for some construction stuff around the house. So that's what determined the height, because I didn't want to measure and do math and I wanted to use up all the material as much as I could. So I got exactly 4 legs out of it. Then I basically notched them all in. So I basically got the circular saw. I made my lines and just ran over it a couple of times and then used the chisel to chip it out. But the way I kind of did that, so that's one leg done. And I did that 4 times, which took a while. But that's how I measured it. So basically what I did was I got the 2x4 beam and I just laid it on top and drew all around it and used it as a stencil, so I didn't have to do any measurements. And I did that over and over and over again. There you go, doing it again. So yeah, just laid it on, line, use a square. And then here I got 2 pieces together. I just clamped them together so I could just use the same line. Didn't have to worry about it not lining up. So again, and then it was also, I had to double check because it's very easy to get into a rhythm and then realize you've made 4 left legs instead of 2. I nearly did that, but I caught myself on time, so that was all good. And then I also notched the bottom of the legs because I basically wanted 2x4s along the top and along the bottom to reinforce it so I wouldn't rack. And so here is me cheating again, just laying the wood on there, the 2x4 and just stenciling around it. and then cutting it out. This is the initial putting it together. So cheating again, I wanted to make sure it was square. I just grabbed some other 2x4s, clamped it, and made sure that everything was square so it couldn't move. That's just, I just used a bunch of, like, I think these are 3-inch construction screws. Actually, these are decking screws. And one thing that was interesting, a lot of the time I'll just use a construction screw because it's self-tapping, so they can just punch through wood easily. The issue though is when you do that, they tear up the wood quite a bit and it looks messy. And I didn't want to mess around with, because it also will shift sometimes, because as you're drilling it in, sometimes it'll just pull a little bit and then it won't square up. So I pre-drilled everything. But the benefit was of pre-drilling, as it hit the chuck on the drill, it actually indented, you might see a little bit there, the wood. So instead of me having to use the, what do you call it, the thing that, countersink, that thing, yeah. Instead of having to mess around and change bits and all that, I was able to do it in one go, which saved a lot of time. So that's one side up. And this is when I finally got most of it together. I also wanted a bit of an overhang. That's what you're seeing here, because I'm putting a 5/8 inch plywood board on top, and it's 24 inches wide. And the only reason it's 24 inches wide is because it's 4 foot lengths. Cut it down the middle, two sets of 2 feet, and I can make 2 shelves out of it essentially. And this overhang was intentional, so you'll notice that obviously with the 2x4 on the sides, if you're doing anything and you're clamping, sometimes it's too much clearance, and so your clamp's not big enough. I do have bigger clamps, but sometimes you want that extra clamp and you just want that space. So I deliberately had this overhang so that the 5/8 inch plywood on this side has just the clearance of the plywood. So you've got plenty of room, you can use shorter clamps, etc. I also then added some bracing in between. Again, just kind of worked out the midway point and then just spaced it out to make sure it was all lined up right. That's the bottom now done as well. Everything was square, which was great. So the table's nice and level. That's the bottom shelf, which I did out of 1/2 inch. So it was a bit thinner, but for the bottom shelf, I didn't need something so robust. And then, so then I cut that to shape, put it down the bottom. And then the next one was the top, which is the 5/8. I did countersink those because I didn't want to like ruin the top of the thing, and I wanted the board, and I wanted the screws to be a bit lower down so they wouldn't catch on anything when I'm working on it. So there you go, you can see it countersunk in. And yeah, and that's the finished product. So I decided to put it on the back wall. And so there you can see it along there. I've been able to get some more shelves on there. And my small woodworking bench that I can then pull out and move around, that one I can move into the middle of the room. And it's, yeah, cleaned up a lot of space. And that's it. Any questions?
Did you have any materials left over at all?
Actually, I still had, because I had 2 8x4 sheets, one 8x4 sheet of each type of plywood. So I have enough to make another bench, which is my goal is to then make a second one to make it like an L bench. Because what I'd like to do is actually build a bench here that I can then lift up my miter saw so that it's level and it has a nice area that it can run along that side. So yeah, I do have some materials, yes. But I used up all the main materials that I had that I worked out for the project. So.
I always have so much left over, I'm gonna give up math and fractions and do it your way.
There you go. And if you want to know how long it took me several days. So yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Cool, thank you.
All right, that was the last name on my list. Anybody have a project to show that didn't get on the list? In the back, great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Devin. I'm new to the area. This is partially a cry for help, mostly because these hands can't really do the task that they are required to do. I'm a leather worker. I have a lifting belt right here. It is not yet complete. When it is done, it's going to have a cool lever right here so that instead of treating it like a giant regular belt, be able to just kind of cinch it down in one motion. The problem is I need to stitch. Traditionally, I would hand stitch, but the thickness of the leather is such that the chisels that I have don't really go all the way through. So short of taking my drill press and one by one making each and every hole, I need to figure out how to machine stitch, and that is where my skill ends. So I'm looking for some help with that, but found this place and it looks awesome. So appreciate y'all having me. How many? I haven't counted, but my estimate is somewhere in the 250 to 300 range. I mean, that's totally just, me talking out of my butt, but like it's a lot of holes, and to try and make it look nice takes about 10 seconds to get each one set up and everything like that. Sorry, there was there and then here. I actually kind of have it to where it's thicker at this end is thinner, and my eye ruler really sucks. If I had to guess, this end is probably 3/8 of an inch, and then this one is about 1/4. So it kind of slopes down so that it kind of tapers for the client, for the customer.
You're a leather worker. To me it seems like you're going to have some sort of an industrial leather machine to be able to punch through that thick of leather.
Yeah. So a lot of you kind of have different types of leather industrial grade machines, and they just vary from the $700 to $3,000 range. And I just, I wish I had that kind of cash lying around. Yeah.
Place that makes shoes or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Very good. You said class 4? Okay. I'll have to look that up. Gotcha. And then I think there was another hand, or any other questions? I mean, the glue, especially once it's cured, is pretty strong. It's just kind of the reinforcing it, just because they're going to be it's not going to be bearing weight. It's kind of from the inside going out, but it's also just they're going to be tossing it around and not really. Oh, just to reinforce, because this is 3 layers thick. Sorry, I guess I should have clarified that. Yeah, like it's a couple layers of leather thick, and then there's some suede lining on the inside to just make it comfortable in case this person ever feels like lifting with their shirt off.
Is there a reason it's tapered?
That's just for comfort. If you when it's on, this is someone who's bigger around than I am, but you can kind of see it's going to go on like this, and then they will kind of ratchet it down like that. And so just to kind of, at this point where it's 2 layers thick, it can kind of dig in a little bit. So it doesn't make the biggest of difference, but just kind of makes it a little bit more comfortable.
Could you use rivets?
You could, just like in this case, they're wanting it stitched, and so, and like, normally that's kind of the standard is for a belt to be stitched. So that's kind of when people are asking for a lifting belt, that's kind of what they're expecting. But yeah, thank you.
All right, if that's everybody, then we shall move on to classes and announcements. So we have a few classes coming up. Most of them are sold out, unfortunately, but you can go check out the calendar on the website, knoxmakers.org/events, and see what's coming up over the next few weeks. Things that still have room in them, this Friday at 6 p.m. will be slow jams in the wood shop. So if you're working on a wood project and you just want some help in a communal atmosphere, that will be happening in the wood shop at 6 o'clock. On Saturday at 1 p.m., there will be a small alterations with a machine class, and there are still tickets available for that. As far as announcements go, as we've announced previously, we will be holding a Makers Market here at Knox Makers on June 11th, and vendor applications are open now, and you can check that out at market.knoxmakers.org and see what's the details about that. And then also, because tonight we had a big event, we need volunteers for trash and air filters to help change the air filters and take the trash out to the dumpster. So can we get a few hands to take out trash? There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's 5. Great. Yeah, we'll need help with that because we have quite a bit tonight. So with that, we're going to end up tonight's meeting and open up the workshop. So thank you all for coming, and have a good time tonight.